Welcome into our overtime segment here at SportsSource.tv. Happy to have you with us today. This segment always brought to you by our friends at Smokin' Joe's. 2 locations if you're a cigar aficionado. And that's really the only, you think about it. When do you say aficionado and it's not attached to cigar? It's rare. You don't say, well, he's a coffee aficionado. It doesn't work. So if you're a cigar aficionado, and I don't mean you're like a living, breathing magazine, but you're a human who likes cigars, then Smokin' Joe's is the place to go. 2 locations, the original store on Paper Mill, the newer store, which is down in Alcoa with the walk-in humidor. Well, they both got beautiful places to sit and enjoy your cigar. Smokin' Joe's. All right, gentlemen, wanted to, we covered a lot of stuff in today's show that was kind of in a fun spin to it, but I wanted to get serious here for our overtime segment. Looks like 4 guys are going to start Tennessee's camp in about a week, limited. That'll be Jalen Reeves-Maybin, Shy Tuttle, Jauan Jennings, Austin Smith. Of those 4, which one to you is a bigger concern in terms of moving forward? I think if you're going simply by the intensity of the injury, if you go by injury first, I think Tuttle's the one that's the biggest question mark, is he not?
Yes, yeah. And in fact, he may end up sitting out the whole year, as I believe you reported. And I still go back to the nature of that, but I would say Reeves-Maybin.
Well, I'm talking about the injuries right now, though. Then we'll get to which one's the biggest concern in terms of playing. But
for the importance he has to your team.
Just going to ignore what I'm asking. Okay. All right, let's just jump in and just say which one's most concerned to the team. Forget the seriousness of injury. Which of these guys can you not do without? Jalen Reeves-Maybin, I agree. He was a tackling machine. I don't know who you've got. Kirkland, who looked good for the back half of the year. I think he's got good upside. You should have some other good guys in there, but we really haven't seen any of them proven.
Right. I'm going to go Reeves-Maybin as well. I mean, I think what you've learned, his leadership, you're talking about one of the guys who's not only a good player, he's a team leader, and I think the combination of that, you lost your team leader last year.
And Kurt
so
exactly.
do you go through another season where you're one of your best defensive players, if not your best, plus your best team leader is not on the field. So I'm going to go with Reeves-Maybin.
I am too, and one other thing about him, he's had 2 consecutive years with at least 100 tackles. I can only find 3 players in Tennessee history that have had at least 100 tackles 3 years in a row.
Wow.
So he'd be an elite company in doing that. A.J. Johnson's most recent. Right. But I think Reeves-Maybin, I think he's a heck of a football player. I really like him.
Part of my concern, too, is that even if he does get healthy, that you run the risk of aggravating an injury because he is so active. Because he is on so many plays, and I mean, even just
when you're a linebacker and it's a shoulder,
exactly.
Yeah,
you're using your shoulder as a linebacker. So
yeah,
and at the other positions too, you have a little bit more depth. You may not have great depth, but like you said, okay, Reeves-Maybin doesn't play. Who are your linebackers now? Yeah. I mean, you have a hard time coming up with the names. Yes. So I think the depth at the other positions eases the concerns just a little bit, even if it's not fantastic depth.
All right, number 2 for me, we'll see if you guys agree. I'm kind of, to me at this point, if Tuttle comes back and plays this year, I count that as a pleasant surprise. I'm not counting on it. So I'm not, in other words, I've already crossed that bridge. You're not sitting there worried whether or not he comes back. I'm putting that over here. I'll be pleasantly surprised if he comes back. So to me, number 2 on this list between Austin Smith, Jauan Jennings, it's Jauan Jennings, because everything you asked him to do last year, he did it. He made plays. He was a guy that, a little like Todd Kelly Jr., that somehow, some way, the ball finds the kid. And with Jauan Jennings, you got him on special teams. Wow, he's the first one down there and makes a tackle.
Yep.
You use him as a receiver. Wow, he can make a guy miss. To me, Jennings is a concern, not as much as Reeves-Maybin, but in terms of that offense. One thing, we continue to talk about the pass game, the throw game, and they do rotate a lot of guys. Jennings seems to me to be one of those guys, if I would cut down on the rotation and Jennings would be on the field, put it that way. I would find a way to get Jennings out there. And without him, I think you're losing one of your better weapons as a receiver.
Well, I like him for a couple of reasons. One, I think he's the most physical receiver that they've got. The second thing is, last year was the first time he really played receiver. He was a quarterback in high school.
Right.
I can just see the ceiling on him being pretty high because he's still learning that position. As he learns that position, I think he's going to be even better.
And I think he can't underplay his special teams impact because people were talking about, hey, this guy could be moved to safety and probably give us a really good force, a good tackler on special teams and really aggressive on special teams. And yeah, probably easier to replace there than some of these other guys at their position. But, you know, last year, I don't know if you'd call him a special teams leader, but he was definitely one of them as a freshman.
Yeah, I mean, and it kind of looks like you could almost put him on any skill position, offense or defense to me. You could put him out there just about anywhere. He could help you win football games. I mean, that's kind of the quandary of how are we going to get him on the field and what position and where can he help us the most, and that is receiver. So I think it's a very good, you know, you make a very good argument to put him up there as that important.
In terms of injuries, obviously, you know, that's the one when you look at the national perception around Tennessee, they always say, well, barring catastrophic injuries. How many injuries would it take for you to consider it catastrophic? Let's say Tennessee doesn't have Tuttle this year. Let's say Reeves Maben isn't 100% this year. Okay, never isn't 100% the whole year. All right, that's pretty important. Let's say Jennings isn't back at 100%. How many more do you have to get to where you say catastrophic? Does it have to be Hurd, Dobbs?
I think it's who it is, not the number. I think you could have 3 and it could be catastrophic. If you lost Hurd, Dobbs, and Reeves Maben, I think that's catastrophic for this team.
Then it started to feel that way. Remember last year going into the season in fall camp when they were having players get hurt and get hurt and get hurt, and we were having that question, at what point does it become a concern?
Well, we asked it in the spring.
Yeah.
We asked it all spring long. You know, when is this a concern? And I guess now is when that's going to start to be answered.
Yeah.
All those guys that didn't take part in the spring, and we said, well, they're getting to learn off the field and all this other stuff. You're giving younger guys a chance to get in there. It sounds well and good, but now you'll get into it and figure out, ooh, he looks like he's lost a step because he hasn't played real football scrimmaged in X amount of months. I want to see what the reports are on the guys who weren't there in the spring, who are back now. How do they look, and how do they look early in the season? Because the season, for all the talk of, well, you've got a kind of a cakewalk before Florida, Appy State picked to win its conference. We did the thing on our YP board a few weeks ago. Every time since Michigan they've played a big school, they've been crushed. But you got Virginia Tech, and I'm not sleeping on Virginia Tech playing in a bizarre setup where you don't know where the coaches, what their sightlines are going to be. So you better get Reeves Maben back by week 2, and Jennings and some of these guys, and these guys who sat out the spring, because I think you better. It's not week 3 that it kicks in. I think it's week 2.
And here's one last thing I would say, John, is for Tennessee to take this next step, I think we agree, like with the throw game, the passing game. But to me, another key thing is making sure you have the depth to win some of these games, and especially in the fourth quarter. You keep having these injuries, that keeps whittling away at that depth.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think they have built the roster. But when you compare it to an Alabama, and there aren't 5 teams in college football that compare to Alabama, but when your big rival in the league, the team that everybody has to beat, has been the number 1 recruiting team in the country for the last 5 years or 6 years? Okay, now they've got the depth that everybody else wants, and Tennessee isn't there yet. You got the frontline talent; it's the right age. You're set to win an East Division title, but you still don't have that knockdown, drag out. Yeah, we'll put the 4th string guy in there.
But how's Alabama recruiting in state?
That's the key, isn't it?
Tennessee or their
How is
state?
his domestic policy? There you go.
What's their platform?
Chuck Cavaleris, Jimmy Himes, Bob Hodge, thank you all for being here today, and thank you for watching us here at SportsSource.tv. We'll see you next Sunday at 11 a.m. on WATE 6 for the Sports Source. See you then.